Hello and welcome to episode 35 of the Time to Calibrate podcast. I'm Mark Levesque, and joining me today as co-hosts are Brent Robillard from the Calibrated Wrist and Bob Allaby from the Time to Go Travel and Timepieces YouTube channel. Our special guest today is Watchanista's editor-at-large, Rhonda Riche. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the show, Rhonda.
Hello.
Hey.
Thanks for having me.
Glad to have you.
As per the rules of watch podcasting, we must start with wrist checks. Since you're the guest of honor, how about you go first, Rhonda?
I am wearing today the Sunrex Banana Reef chrono that I at the Toronto Timepiece show. I met with the Sunrex guys. They lent me this watch to test drive, and so that's been over a month now, and I really, really enjoy it.
Cool.
It's going to be hard to give back.
That's the worst part of doing what we do. When we get watches we actually really like, is giving them back. It's the worst.
I know they gave one to Tyler Frederick while he was there too, and he was just over the moon about it because it was that Ayrton Senna inspired 321, and he's just a massive F1 fan. Yeah, but they're great little watches for sure.
What about you, Brent?
What have I got on wrist? Well, actually this morning I am wearing the Omega Speedmaster, and it's the FOIS, the first Omega in space, the one that was released in 2024. And just to piss Mark off, I wore it on a NATO today.
Yeah, that's just all wrong. All kinds of wrong there.
So I had a really cool watch show up yesterday. I don't know if you guys have seen this or not. It's from Vario, Singaporean brand. They've just come out with a sort of a 70s futuristic design. It's called the Futurist with the faceted crystal and crown at the 12 o'clock. Really neat looking watch. Brand new release. I think it comes out on the 8th or 9th of this month. And this is what is on wrist for the day.
Yeah, I saw your video online. It looked really, really cool.
Yeah, it's really nice, really cool watch.
Yeah, I'm a little under the weather, and since we changed time zones, since we rolled back the clocks, I haven't really said anything else. So I'm wearing my Tudor Pelagos, which is
nice,
boring as can be, but just nice, comfy, like chicken soup when you're sick. So for those of you who are not familiar with Rhonda, here's a brief bio. She's an award-winning Toronto-based writer and editor whose work beautifully bridges the worlds of art, design, and horology. Rhonda has contributed to publications such as Du Jour, The Toronto Star, Sotheby's Insights, and Fashion Canada magazine. She's been a familiar voice on CBC Radio's Definitely Not the Opera, and she's the co-author of Covet Garden Home. Most recently, she authored The Wonderful World of Women's Watches and Watch Spotting, The Collectors. Currently, serving as editor-at-large at Watchanista, Rhonda brings a key eye on genuine talent for storytelling to the world of watches, blending craftsmanship, culture, and human connection in every piece she writes. Whether she's exploring the artistry behind timepieces or uncovering the beauty of everyday design, Rhonda's work reminds us that creativity is as much about curiosity as it's about collaboration. She's also a master thrifting. And I thoroughly enjoyed listening to her adventures on the recent episode of TGN podcast. I'll put a link in the show notes below. So Rhonda, did I miss anything?
No, I think I sound so cool with that intro.
Would have sounded a lot better if I read it properly. For our listeners, Rhonda and I both have colds, so mine's worse because it's a man cold. So, right. So forgive me if I'm stumbling all over the place. So how do you describe what you do, Rhonda? A writer, storyteller, curator of design, culture, or all of the above?
I think more, storyteller. I do my own thing. I guess curation's one of those tough words because I do my own thing. I get my own watches, but I wouldn't say that anyone should necessarily follow my path. I like fun watches.
Yeah, that works. What first drew you to writing about art, design, and watches? What was the moment or that you realized that was your creative path?
It's a little bit of, I was a fine arts major. in school, and I would go to the local newspaper to complain about the lack of arts coverage. And they would say, "Well, no one else here wants to do it. Why don't you do it?" So that's kind of how I got into the arts writing and writing in general. And then after that, um, yeah, just that became my job. So I sort of fell into it. I'm not very good at picking career choices because I started off as like an artist, and that didn't make any money. So then I was a waiter, and then that didn't make any money. And then I got into journalism, which also doesn't. I'm not one of those entrepreneur people.
We've set up a GoFundMe for Rhonda. We'll have a link for that.
Rhonda, I'm going to go way back here. I was reading on the Mainspring Watch website an article that
Yes.
there was a profile basically on you, and you talked a lot there about your grandfather, the fact that he was a mechanic on cars and buses, and that maybe that's what sort of sparked your fascination with mechanical watches. So looking back, how did that curiosity evolve into a career that explores watches and culture and people?
Yeah. Well, it's I was writing about, art and design and fashion. Um, and I was the Toronto stringer for In Style magazine. So I had a bunch of friends working there. They left to go work at De Jour, and they said, because I, was always talking about watches, I was fascinated with them. For some reason, I didn't think that that was something I would write about. So my friend who was an editor there said, "You're always boring us with talk about watches. Why aren't you writing about them?" So because I knew about it, but just as like an enthusiast, it wasn't my beat necessarily. So I don't know why I didn't figure it out before then.
That's cool.
I think it's a little bit because sometimes if you write about what you love, you don't love it anymore after a while, but that hasn't happened yet.
That's awesome. So we talk about the Canadian watch community here sometimes and how it really
Yes.
feels to be thriving right now. You and I met for the first time in Vancouver at the Vancouver Timepiece Show, and now
Yes.
you're my go-to person for chats and laughs at these sort of things. But you've probably attended more shows like that than the rest of us have over the years. What are your thoughts? I was wondering on the importance of bringing the community together at shows like that here in Canada and even internationally.
Yes. It's amazing that the Toronto Timepiece Show, Vancouver Timepiece Show, looking forward to Montreal. It's because I've been to, all the the big watch shows,
Mhm.
going back to Basel, SIHH, Watches and Wonders. Um those are they're a thing on their own, but I really feel energized by these local shows. Like you said, go to for chats and stuff. It's so much fun to go to local events and meet, Canadians, because we are starved. Why am I flying to Switzerland just to see things when and then I think also these local shows beyond Canada even, like, the Wind Up show in all over now, I guess, in New
Mhm.
York and Chicago and San Francisco. Um, they're really they're filling in it's kind of an intersection because, you have these like, going back, I'm sort of just trying to organize my thoughts here with my cold,
Mhm.
but if you went back when you first had the Kickstarter watch startups, and people going online, the micro brands, um, you still it was a big shift to like not be able to go into a boutique and look at a watch. You're kind of taking some risks,
Mhm.
and these shows really let people try them on. But on top of that, meet the watchmakers, meet the faces behind the brands, and then also add into that meeting other collectors or other writers or other designers. There's like, it's such a huge community, and it really allows people to come together in a way that I don't think in the many, many years of writing about watches, it's like a golden age in a way for me. I really like it.
Yeah, I have to agree. Yeah.
I'm getting excited about it. I may be a little teary even when I think about it.
It's definitely rejuvenating. We've talked about that too. You come back feeling fresh and ready to kind of keep going with what we're doing, talking watches, writing about watches. So
Yeah, and as Rhonda mentioned before, by writing about watches all the time or being immersed in this space for such a long time, you fear that you might start not liking it anymore. And like Rhonda, it's never happened to me. But these shows that we attend with all of our friends and common people with the same
mentality,
interest or same mentality or like-minded is the word I was looking for, but my cold brain is not working well. It kind of rejuvenates. It makes you excited about it all over again, as if you're seeing things for the first time. Seeing people look at watches they've never seen, but online, seeing how excited and enthusiastic they are makes you feel even more rejuvenated or more into it.
Mhm.
So, what fascinates you the most right now in the world of watches? Like, what's piquing your interest?
Again, it's an interesting, what did they say? The curse is to may you live in interesting times. But it is interesting times with, everything from tariffs and
Oh yeah,
supply chain issues and, the shift more to online. Um, it's in a way a great opportunity, I think, for the up and coming brands or, smaller brands. Like when you think going back to the show, and you have the Toronto Timepiece show, and you have like Oris, which an independent, but like a big independent. But they've always come out and supported it, and they're doing really interesting pieces. And Christopher Ward, that have really just in the last 2 years, just, not blossom, but they're just doing like really interesting things. And, yes, we would all maybe like to have a Vacheron or a Patek one day, but I don't feel like I need to have that. There's like, it's just so much open for people to just get into watches, and it doesn't have to be a $10,000 investment to get in anymore. And yeah, so it's sort of democratizing, either getting away of gatekeeping. Even people I know who do have massive, super expensive watch collection, still like to have a Casio or a G-Shock. So yeah, it's democratizing.
Yeah, 100%.
And that also lets in like different groups of people too. It's not just, there's, I think, a lot more women involved. And which before, like, if 10 years ago, I would be maybe the only girl in the room at a lot of things. And we saw at the Timepiece show, tons of women, young people, just like really, it's fun, because then they also bring in their own perspective. So I get hooked on things I hadn't maybe considered before, and those stories.
Yeah, that's very cool.
So earlier this year, I had the opportunity to be published in
Yes.
print for the very first time in Brent's magazine, The Calibrated Wrist.
Yes.
And I'm not a pro writer like you guys at all. I'm trying to convince Brent to hire me as his full-time travel correspondent, but work in progress there. But as the only non-professional writer in the room here, could you tell us what your role as editor at large at Watchinista looks like?
Yes, it's I think it's sort of a hybrid thing. I've been there for a long time now. And I just kind of came in as a freelance writer originally, and then kind of got bumped up. So, while I don't get to, I'm not the editor, I don't get to, pick all the direction and things. I have the freedom to pitch ideas, some, ideas that maybe are a little out of the box for a lot of online magazines. So, I'm just recently this week I did a thing on, the weird Rolexes. Everybody talks about, Seamaster or say Seamasters. Nobody's talking about Rolex Seamasters. Submariners, TM2s,
Or maybe they
Daytonas.
should be.
Yes. I'm just, but yeah, there's this there's all these little interesting, crazy designs they've had over the years, and they were sort of abandoned. And, it's sort of been, I fell into that research hole for a while now because it's one of my greatest ever thrift shop finds was finding a Rolex Standard at an antique store in Hamilton in a box of, it was a bag full of watches for $10.
Wow.
And so that's the greatest, but that led me down a rabbit hole of what they call Canadian Rolexes. So the Rolex is, which also brings you back into the whole world of tariffs, because to get around tariffs, they used to just assemble them in cases made in Canada. And, but yeah, it's all, this is why I love watches. It's all a rabbit hole. You find one little thing, and then that you learn about the history of the company and weird ins and outs or design blips. So yeah, I get to pitch those kind of stories that really, I hope, interest other people, but they are points of fascination for me that otherwise, wouldn't get published in other places. So, yes, that's what
awesome.
editor at large. I get to, and sometimes they assign things to me, and I like to, because Watchnista is based in Switzerland, in Lucerne. So, we, bring a different kind of context sometimes to the storytelling, that it's a little less business, a little less, the spec sheet just put things into context. And this is where, coming from writing about design and fashion, everything has a context and a history on top of just, here's a new release. It's got a different color of secondhand. So, yes, that's, does that make sense what I do? I don't even know what I do sometimes.
Yeah.
That sounds great.
Yeah, it sounds great.
It's I'm going to digress here a little bit, but you mentioned those quirky Rolex designs that you can go back and dig up, and things that they abandoned. But I have a friend, actually was a coworker of mine, who a few years ago brought me in this Rolex, and it was this tiny little thing, maybe 33, 34 millimeters. And it was called the Rolex Skyrocket. It was one of those Canadian Rolexes, basically produced during the Second World War. And it was the coolest little thing. And he had it on this very bizarre bracelet, but it just really, really suited it. But I could see somebody even strapping that on a bund. Sorry, Mark. And and wearing a watch like that even today. But the things I had never even heard of those before he brought that in to show me. But very, very cool.
Brent, I'm sorry, man. 33 millimeters on a bund. Even Jason Heaton wouldn't wear that.
Rhonda, you talked about writing outside the box, and that's definitely an example. But I find that a lot of your writing too, it doesn't just talk about the watch; it sort of situates it in kind of historical context, whether that be design or whether it be fashion, or even talk a little bit about watches and identity. Do you think that we're at a moment in time where watches say more about who we are than just telling the time?
Oh, definitely. Because, you guys probably have, encountered so many people who, when you write about watches, or that you're into watches, go, does anyone even wear a watch anymore? Got it on your phone. You don't need. So there's definitely that group. But so I guess to be someone who wears a watch, you are saying something that you value time more than just like, oh, it's 10 to 11 now. The whole, again, I don't want to keep going back to my own body of work, but there's a feeling that with having a watch as opposed to looking on your phone or having a smart watch, the act like right now, I'm just looking at my watch, looking at the time. I'm admiring the design of it. I can feel the watch moving around on my hand. I connect with the time. Whereas, my husband, who just wears an Apple Watch most of the time, he's constantly getting little notifications. He can never disconnect or reconnect. So I feel like for the people who are into watches and the younger generation, like my nephews and nieces now, who couldn't care less when I used to talk about watches, are now like they're into it. Not all of them, say 2 of them, but 2 out of 5. But yes, they like that. The storytelling, people notice it. Like my nephew, people will notice when he wears he has a field watch because he works like in building stuff. So he needs something that can take being knocked around. And the fact that he wears a watch, I guess, gets attention from other people he works with, and then he'll talk about it, and either they'll tune out but mostly they seem to be interested because it's part of his personality. Like he can't really check a phone when he's working. He needs to be able just to turn his wrist and tell the time and time things. And so yeah, sorry, I'm digressing. I don't even have the NyQuil to blame. But yes, I think like people who are into watches, it's an extension of their personality, but it's an extension that they can communicate to people who don't even need to be into watches either. Like if I was into, I know, there's lots of crossover with the watch people, the everyday carry people, and they can talk about knives all day, but I don't think that necessarily, like, you can't walk into work, meet a new guy, and then say, "Hey, want to see my knife?"
Well, technically you can, but that might get you in trouble.
Yeah. So I just want to circle back to the thrifting thing for just a minute. One of my favorite things is when I go on Instagram and see your thrifting adventures with the hashtag things I didn't buy or things I bought.
Yes.
You mentioned, I was going to ask what was your best find ever. You've answered that one, but is there any standout finds recently? Anything special?
I think, the Rolex is, because of its being Rolex and the Canadian Rolex history, and also for under $10, and there were a bunch of other watches in there too. So yeah, that's kind of the big one. But right now, the other watch I was going to wear today, I got, when I do something sort of big. So when I had this book about women's watches come out this year, I like to buy myself a little watch as a treat. And I was in York, Pennsylvania for the National Association of Watch and Clock Collectors convention. And they have a big kind of swap meet flea market as part of the convention. And so there were 2 things. I found this Wittnauer that has an exotic dial, burled wood, which, these exotic dials are very in right now, vintage, making a comeback. It was also from a time when Wittnauer was actually run by a woman CEO, because they're kind of an American company like Boulevard. She wasn't the first Swiss CEO, but she was the first American CEO of a watch company. So it kind of tied into like the book and the launch. And so it has a sort of historic, it has a special meaning. Like they all do. Although I have too many watches, so I can't say that, they're all my favorites. But this, that was like the timing of it being in the States, American company, a woman-run company, the design that's coming back from the 70s and 60s. So it seemed like to encapsulate everything. And it was, $60. So it was I like a good bargain. I like to brag about the price of things too.
Are there still
That's
bargains
cool.
to be found? I know that,
Yeah.
way back in the early 90s when I first started getting into watches, I used to be able to go to antique shops in Montreal. Sherbrooke Street here has a bunch of them lined up, and you can go, cross the street back and forth, and you'd find the occasional Seamaster, at $150,
Hmm.
$200. I've found that ever since the internet's come around, it's so easy for someone to take their watch and look up what their value is, and they're going to price them accordingly, like what they find on eBay or whatever they find online. There's no longer that
Yes.
little treasure guy had no idea what it was and just put a sticker on it on his, he paid $5 from it for, in an estate sale. He put $25 on it because he's going to make a little profit and put it in his showcase. Are there still deals like that to be found?
Um. Yeah. It's harder for sure. Um. But there's still always things that fall through the cracks. Um. I was gonna say one of my, back in the old days when I go to like pawn shops and things even, and that's where I learned I learned things, which is also valuable. I used to go to this pawn shop near where I worked, and they they're the ones who like turned me on to Universal Genève when they were just basically a dead brand and forgotten. And the guy at the pawn shop is they're gonna make a comeback. You just wait and see. So
Yeah.
that I've gotten to that early. So I think that there's still brands out there that are underappreciated. But if you're in the know, the old school jewelry shops when you used to be able to like there's a guy up the street. They used to carry Rolex before Rolex, back in the 70s, I guess. But um yeah, before the brands all kind of, tried to corral who was selling and things. So yeah, there's that for but yeah, the second part of the question, they're all always things that fall through the cracks. So um especially with women's watches, like I got a Zenith for $20 at the Value Village at the beginning of the year. And
Wow.
um and Facebook Marketplace, sometimes you find people who don't know what they're selling. Like they don't know the how to like get an app, take a picture of it, download it. Because that's if you do go to the Value Village now, there's like 30 guys hanging around the jewelry display case with their phones, taking pictures of stuff, trying to figure out if it's valuable or not. That's no fun. And on Facebook Marketplace, sometimes this is a sad story, I guess. I do like Zenith a lot, especially vintage. And when I'm sick now, so I was doing this yesterday. If I'm sickly, I will spend too much time scrolling Facebook Marketplace. And 2 summers ago, I saw a listing. It was very bad pictures, blurry, 5 watches, but I felt like I knew that shape design was Zenith, which was the first analog digital watch that they did. The thing that killed when Zenith got bought out, and they by like the Zenith record company or electronics company also named Zenith, so they wanted to switch everything to electronics. So yes, they I recognized the shape, basically odd shape, through the blurry photo. I thought I was going to make this great thing, like I was going to hoodwink this person because they didn't know what they had. Traveled out, to meet them in the parking lot of the Yorkdale Mall, and this kid gets out of his mom's car. He's selling his grandfather's watches, and it was a Zenith. It was exactly what I thought it was, and he was selling them all for like $35, and and I felt so guilty. It was like, where did you get these? He goes, oh, they're my grandfather left them to me. It's like, oh, maybe you want to hang on to these. But I did promise I wouldn't sell them. I would keep them forever. And
Did you give him
Well,
more than
and I
$35?
did. No. That kid's got to learn a lesson somehow.
So you've described watches as wearable art. Can you expand on that idea?
Yes.
What makes a watch artistic to you?
Oh, there's so many things. There's like the artistry of something. I met an enamelist from Paul N, the Scottish watch brand,
Yep.
and just like the amount of work and levels of just precise, and it just looks like a sun. Sorry, my cat is howling now. But like just the artistry, the craftsmanship, and then the design. What like I'm just looking at the Sunrex again on my wrist. That it's a very balanced case. It feels very comfortable, but also substantial at the same time. Which does that means different things to different people. Like I have titanium watches, I've tried on titanium watches that feel like nothing at all. And that's a feeling still at the same time. And other people like to have the presence, to know it's there. That's the wearable part, and that I can look at it. Going back to the Sunrex again, the sapphire has this little tint to it that when you turn it around, you get a blue flame or line that kind of circles around, and then just the auditory feeling. I can hold certain watches up to my wrist and feel them ticking away, and thinking, and then it makes me think about I'm not the first person to say it, but it's like a little tiny beating heart with the mechanics. Like there's just so many different angles you can approach something. I love fonts for numerals. I love, when we're talking about this Rolex article, it's like when they discontinued the Milgauss, and that's my ideal Rolex because of the tinted sapphire, because of the little orange lightning bolt. It's these tiny little details. It's if I went to an art gallery and sat myself in front of a painting or a sculpture, I would also be finding tiny details or large picture things. And, there's also sometimes the stories behind the brands. It's, I think other than maybe dance, watches cover all the different kinds of art forms. They're visual. There's some that even smell good.
Some are musical even too.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like I really want to get myself an alarm watch or something, or like, I did do a test drive of like a Grand Saunier once, and I was too nervous to wear it that I would break it somehow. But I do appreciate when they're there and you just in a nice padded room where nothing can get dropped or broken.
Have you ever seen or held one of those Vulcan crickets when they go
No,
off?
and I
It's
really want
quite violent.
one. Violent?
It's jarring. Oh yeah, it shakes, and I don't know if I had that on my wrist when I was sleeping and it woke me from deep sleep, it would scare the bejesus out of me.
No, I keep looking out for those too, because I do have a couple Vulcans, but not the alarm. That's one. Not my. I wouldn't say it's a grail, but it's on my checklist of things that I want to experience.
And they're still relatively affordable. I mean, if anything is ever
Yeah.
affordable anymore, but they're available. They're out there.
Yes. Do you have a limit for because I know I have a limit for like vintage. With I don't think I would spend more than $100 on anything. What's your affordable limit for?
I'm not a vintage guy. I
Yeah.
am so anal with accuracy that having a vintage watch, and also they just don't feel the same as a modern watch, a contemporary watch. I just and also sizes. I tend to
Yeah.
wear things 40 millimeters and above. Anything lower than that, I mean, I have a couple of 36 millimeter isotopes, part of the collection that I manage, that I can wear, sort of. They're comfortable. They look good. It's quite the size difference, and a lot of these vintage watches are a lot smaller. So I have a bit of a hard
Yes.
time with that. But I know that Brent and Bob have no issues with that.
No, I don't mind. And I do have quite a few vintage and neo-vintage watches in my collection. But anytime someone asks me about my budget, I have to wait till my wife comes in and ask her.
For me, I'm not a huge vintage collector, but I like certain looks. Like we were at the British Watchmaker Day show earlier, was it this year? Earlier this year.
In
And
March.
we went to, Jason and I actually from the Toronto Timepiece show went together, and we went to a vintage shop called Lucky Time. I actually have the hat right here, Lucky Time watch. And there was a skin diver there. I couldn't make out, they didn't know the brand at all. The brand was like worn off the face of the watch. I got it for I think it ended up being about 60 Canadian dollars in the end, but it just was a cool look. I just no clue what brand it is. I opened it up and showed it, the movement around to people, and nobody identified it, but just it was a cool, like, affordable little find.
That's really cool. I'd go for that. Yeah, under $100, it's a gimme. Like,
Yeah.
if I find something interesting at under $100, I'd probably pick it up as well, even if it's not accurate.
Yes.
Just for the fun of having it.
Mm-hmm.
That's the way to go.
I have learned as I look at I have a box of project watches where they were like, $10, but then they need $300 worth of work. So that's a problem with vintage. I go both ways. Right now I kind of fascinated by independence, things that they're doing. But yeah, as far as like, things I have that are like, Jaeger and Cult I got on eBay are very cheap. And rolled the dice.
You mentioned independence just there. Are there any particular watchmakers or designs that have recently caught your attention or represent innovation in storytelling or craft?
Well, I was going to go back to Isotope. When you brought that up, I was, going to cut you off and talk about how much I love what they're doing right now. 'Cause fun, interesting, just like the people behind the brand are all, it's just a feel good story. And I've been interested since I forget.
The Will Return.
Yes, the Will Return. Yeah. I was going to say Out of Office, but Will Return, like, it was just such a great, a classic design right out of the box. And I will get one, saving my pennies for Montreal for the next timepiece show, where I allow myself to get one watch each show.
I want to go on record that we did not pay Rhonda to say any of these things. This is truly just
and I'm not asking you to give me one either. I'm going to pay for it, and I'm going to get it myself.
You mentioned that your collection is huge, and you have like a number of watches, and so many that none could, or they all can't be your favorite. But I'm curious, is there one that you would say kind of captures your personality when you strap it on?
It's funny. I haven't strapped it on because it's broken, but one of the first, big purchases I made for myself, which wasn't a big purchase, was Omega Dynamic. So from like the late 60s, early 70s, I just like that, UFO shape. I'm kind of stuck in a 70s. I think a lot of people like the design. Like I'm, talked about my grandfather, and he fixed things up, and he was a watch guy because he was mechanical, and sometimes he would work on people's cars. They would pay him in watches. And then he also, he would give them to my dad. So that's kind of like my early watch exposure is very much 1970s, and I'll never not love something, a big chunk of funk. Uh, and so yeah, I got one. It was like new old stock. There was a jewelry store just up the street from where I lived in Little Portugal, and I used to go into the all the old school jewelry stores to see what they had, and they had this Omega that was nobody bought the first time around, and so I bought it, and he was like had the price sticker, the what when he first had it in the store, so like $300 or something. And then his daughter came in and said, "You can't sell it for that much." And he said, "Well, I told her already." So that's I that it's the history thing. I just a sucker for 70s watches. It was not my first Omega. My grandfather, my dad gave me, he had an Omega that my grandfather had given him. So I have that too, birth year kind of watch. And yeah, just that one needs, the crown fell off, and I hate, I was going to say I hate Omega. I don't like that now they consolidated all their repairs. There used to be a place just down on Richmond and like downtown Toronto that was Omega, all of the Swatch Group brands, and they had watchmakers there, and you could take it in, like the strap wore out, and I went in and got a new one because they had them in stock still and then at some point everything has to go back to Switzerland, and they mess everything up because they'll like, I got a quote I just wanted to get the crown replaced, and they went, we are gonna send it back to Switzerland, we're gonna polish it. No, I want all those scratches and dings. They were well earned. So yeah, that's what I hate. I hate that.
Yeah, there was a guy in Montreal that used to be an official Omega service center, and you could just go see him, bring him your Omega, and he'll take it apart and let you watch over his shoulder. And
Yeah.
unfortunately, that guy passed away, and I think they're still around, but they're no longer authorized Omega service center. Everything's like you said, either out of Toronto or Switzerland. It's unfortunate that those places were magical.
Oh, I love that. Like they call it the magic window, and you could watch the watchmakers actually working on your watch, like you said, stand over their shoulder and tell
Yeah.
The story of like the infamous Omega Genève era, where they moved the headquarters from Vienne to Geneva for a brief period and did like these crazy designs. Yeah, you learn so much from those guys. And
Absolutely. And that place had counters. Like you said, they had actual inventory of old 1970s parts and bracelets and straps. And it was like a time warp walking into this guy's office. It was amazing. It was at right next to the Bell Center in Place de Gauchetière, an old office building.
Wow.
Yeah, I miss those days.
Brent mentioned your large collection, and with having a larger collection like that, is there any watches that you would consider a grail, something that you'd like to add to the collection at some point in time, something special?
There is I have I already have it, but I want a better version. It's a JLC. It's just got like, I got a really good deal, but I guess whoever had it before smoked a lot, so the dial is kind of gross. So, and then I think, would I refinish it? Could I use my connections to get JLC to clean up the dial or replace the dial? Or do I leave it like it is? Because most things I do like the scratches and stuff, but yeah, tobacco stains are not pretty. So I think
That's so unfortunate.
I can't think of anything else that's grail like. I've got lots of great watches. I've got one. I just want a better one. And And yeah, I would really like a reverse too at some point.
Yeah, reversals are pretty cool. You probably get something really nice with an engraving maybe on the back of the reverso, something to
Mhm.
your own design. That'd be neat.
Yes. But I wonder if there's some brands that did reversos at some point, like Omega had one. So yeah, I wonder if could I settle for, I just want to watch it flips over. I'll get a the Vario we talked about
Mhm.
earlier.
Yeah. Yeah.
I have a nice flippy watch that could
Yeah, actually,
satisfy my
Bob's got
need.
one in the collection that they use for the get-togethers, the Alon Solution get-togethers in Toronto and Montreal, Ottawa, and all that stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Mhm.
he's got one if you ever want to see it. Oh, Bob, I think just took off to go
Um,
get it. There it is.
yeah.
It's actually quite surprisingly. Not that I was questioning if there was going to be good quality. It's just it's
Have you
so
seen these before,
satisfying to
Rhonda?
flip it over because it's got this little ball detent. When
Mhm.
you flip it over, it's a little thick to be honest, but it's really really cool.
Oh, it's very satisfying. Here, I'll hold it right up to
That's
the
the one.
mic so you can hear it.
I haven't actually flipped. I did see them, but I not flipped them. So let's see
Little
this.
little ASMR for the
Yeah,
listeners out
yeah.
there. Yeah.
That is.
Yeah, it's yeah, it's quite the fidget spinner. I'd be playing with it all the time. Or maybe you wear it loose enough for you to be able to do it while it's still on your wrist. But that would be a little weird. So we mentioned before that you're the co-author of Covet Garden Home, which celebrates personal
Yes.
style and authentic spaces. How does this book reflect your philosophy on design and creativity?
Um, the book was, was part of we did an online magazine, and then that culminated in a book, and the sort of the point of view, our motivating thing was kind of like going into people's, you walk past somebody's house and you look in the window and go, that looks like an interesting house. So we didn't style it. It wasn't like an architectural digest thing where they had a decorator come in. We went into people's houses and shot how they lived. Um, and that, same thing goes to watches. There's people who can have very tasteful collections of all the right watches or all the right art, but it doesn't really speak about their own tastes and personality, their own quirks. There are messy parts of being a watch fan. Sometimes you might not have a cool watch, or you know you might get I was gonna say, you might get ribbed for having an but Invicta, I mean. But so yeah, it was like that for homes, to walk in and discover not just how they laid out a room or what art they hung out on the wall. We also looked at things like their watch collection, or what were their other interests. If they were a musician, what maybe get them to talk about their instruments and why they chose those instruments and what they used them for. Is it just for fun, or are they professionals? If you were and not nobody was particularly famous or anything, but they would bring in their passions, and we would get excited about their passions, and we're glad to talk about it. And sometimes that could be like, they would also share things like, what's my recipe for shortbread, or where do they go shopping for flea markets finds. So I think that's kind of carried on. Like, that was a project we did with friends, and we'd all worked in print, and then print started to die off. So we decided we'd make our own fun and do this decor magazine. Again, but then we missed print, so we wanted to do a book part of it, and it's great. Books, all print magazines. Again, to have something in print, I enjoy reading it, having it, going back and looking at it. I'm just gonna take out my copy of The Calibrated Wrist here. It was so much fun to have something that I could hold in my hands and turn the pages. And again, feel the, there's a textural thing, a smell of print.
Yeah, there's a
Being able
tactile
to,
to it.
yeah, and which brings me back to things I like about watches or anything, art, design, that it
Agreed.
appeals to all the senses. It's not just looking at a screen. So yes, let's bring back more print.
It's music to Brent's ear.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What can you tell us about the your book, The Wonderful World of Women's Watches? How did it come about,
Oh.
and what was its inspiration?
Yeah, The Wonderful World of Books of Women's Watches, sorry. That came about, that was interesting because they approached me about wanting to do a book about women's watches. Tannoy is the publishing company, and they're, as far as names in coffee table books and those kind of art books, they're big names. So it was very exciting. It was a really great editorial team to work with, that we got to do things a little outside of the traditional watch book. And there's not a lot of books about women's watches, and so the idea was to not just have a history, an academic sort of thing, but a fun, more contemporary thing. So we had stories of, Mercedes Gleitz, I'm sure I'm mispronouncing it, but she was a woman who swam across the English Channel wearing a Rolex.
For Rolex, yeah.
And they just had, her watch was up at auction. But she's sort of the first brand ambassador, that they established so many things. This is in the 30s, or 20s, but they established so many things that we still know about the watch world today, having celebrity endorsements, having these marketing of a watch as a sports watch, a dive watch. So yeah, but at the same time, some watches that are just jewelry watches, not just jewelry watches, but there's just so many interesting things, and so yeah, it was, if you can cut out all that blathery part,
No, not at
we
all.
got
It's
to
not
take a
blathery at all.
rather a freewheeling kind of look at watches. So we had chapters talking to people like Bryn Wallner about the sort of new interest in women's watches and smaller watches, or other people like how do you wear a watch? How do you buy a watch? If you're how do you build a watch wardrobe with it? Maybe not specifically, female centric, because guys also have to buy watches too and figure out where to wear them. But just like, every little part of it, the women who made history, the female CEOs, people who even just like, the Queen, the Breguet, I was gonna say Marie Antoinette's watch, like how did that play into society? The first wristwatches were worn by women, and then guys didn't start wearing them until World War II, because they made a lot more sense than a pocket watch in the trenches. And even like, yeah, it was just free. And I'd like to do another one, because there were just so many approaches. So I want this book to sell well, so they'll ask me to do part 2, because it's still a terribly underrepresented subject in the publishing. That I think the last time Roberta Ness wrote a book, maybe 20 years before, and that's it. And we know that watch books come out at an alarming rate every year. So it's a subject that could use more coverage. And I think it's just interesting that women's watches, we were talking about like vintage being smaller, that there was at some point in the 60s where like women's watches were huge. They had these big mod, kind of like a, you know, 48 millimeter big mod fashion watches, but men's watches were teeny tiny. And, you know, 30 years later, people are like, that's a lady's size under 40. I could never. And it just changes all the time. So
It's a lot more
I like
fluid
being
now.
able to, yes.
You mentioned that it's underrepresented. And so like a book like this is obviously long overdue. But if you just took your book at face value for the title, you'd almost miss the fact that it's so much about women's contributions to horology and not just the watches itself. So I'm curious, was there any bit of research that you fell upon that really surprised you or that you found more interesting than others?
Yes. Again, another reason that I want to do volume 2, because there were so many stories that I didn't get the chance to tell. And there's also, you know, stuff that's evolving now. There were, going back to the Rittenauer story, which didn't make the book because I didn't, you know, I was still finding things out, and I had a deadline, had to stop at some point. Um, that that there were, you know, on one hand, there were lots of women involved in watchmaking, in American watchmaking, which I didn't even really get into. Um, there were these, female CEOs. The watchmakers themselves were women. I found all these um, archival pictures from the Hamilton Museum, when Hamilton was still making watches in America. And it's all
The Radium Girls.
Mm-hmm.
yeah, Radium Girls. And I met someone once who was like, oh, they went to work during the war because all the men were at war. And I was like, look at this picture. They're wearing like Edwardian costumes. This is, you know, 1878, not 1945. The women were there way before. And you know, the economy, like watchmaking in America and in Europe, was like, this was the time where things were getting industrialized and making watches affordable to people. And so some of it's kind of a sad story. It's like women and children worked for cheap in the factories. They didn't have to pay them as much as men. So that's why they had, but yeah, you know, but that's a bigger picture where people think women didn't work outside of the house until the 60s. It's like, nope, there were women working in these, you know, as watchmakers in the 1800s. So that's like a history thing. But then there's also just fun stories, like, you know, women designers who haven't really got their due yet, like just doing the aesthetics. and yeah, people, there's just so much. Yeah, I don't know where I know I had to stop, but there was just so many places still to go, and these amazing stories, and they're bigger than just watches. They're, you know, people building a whole industry, people support, like the you know, people who made cuckoo clocks in the Black Forest. It was a whole family. It was a cottage industry, and everyone in the family would contribute somehow. And we kind of forget that in a you know, industrial society, or in an industrial society, that we apply our own experience and think, oh yeah, it was like, you know, dad went to work and mom stayed home and, you know, kept house. It was like, no, it's never like that. I don't know how. Maybe Leave It to Beaver was the only time that, you know, ever happened. My mom worked, my grandmother worked. I'm sure my great grandmother worked too, outside of the house. But yeah, it's a bigger story. It becomes a bigger story, and it's an interesting thing because, you know, you need to know the past in a way to apply it to the future. With, you know, I think that our economy is changing now, and we have to this is why I also like supporting independent brands and things. It's like we want to support everyone so that everyone can have a good life and some nice watches, and not taking things away from anyone else at the same time. But I just want everyone to have nice watches and a nice job, a good meal.
In the same way that you say you could write a volume 2, we could probably ask you a lot more questions about this particular book. But the thing is, Rhonda, is that you've been really busy this year, and you've actually released 2 books. In fact,
Yes.
Watch Spotting just showed up on my doorstep this week, and in there you explore the world of sort of celebrity collections and celebrity watch collecting. Was there a particular star? Was there a particular person whose approach to collecting intrigued you?
Yeah,
Something you
it's
weren't expecting to come across?
because it's I'm there's maybe like 2. I think Serena Williams is interesting, even though she's like, a brand ambassador and her entire collection is just Audemars, um, and nothing else. But it's the way she wears them, and you go back into her whole history and her own personal style. I think like she's just a great example of she knows about the watches, she cares about the brand, but at the same time, it's her wearing them the way she's the way she plays tennis. She does it her way, wearing like on. There was always the controversy about what outfits she was wearing on the court, and and it's also just crazy to wear a watch playing tennis. It's got to be a well-built watch to take that kind of hit. But yeah, she, just seems, the more I read up about, each time, the way she wears them, but also like she was wearing the big Royal Oaks when people thought that was too big for a woman to wear. And then most recently, she's wearing the little tiny mini Oaks, but wearing like 3 of them at the same time. But it's kind of a message. She's a good example of someone using watches like she loves them. She's not a lot of brand ambassadors will take them on. Somebody will come out when they go up on the podium and slap one on their wrist and then take it off right away again. And but these, they seem to be connected to her lifestyle, but also her personal expression. So that was one that surprised me because, originally I just would have thought she's just a brand ambassador. That's not interesting. And then on the other side are people. I know Ryan Gosling. Some people are. I guess better thing would be Brad Pitt. He's been a brand ambassador for Breitling, but he always seems like a guy who liked watches way too much to be tied down to one brand. So, we talked about in the book about it's like watch method acting, if that's a thing. Like he needs a watch to get into his character. So it's like it becomes part of his process as an actor that I hadn't really thought about until I talked to people at IWC and for the F1 movie, and how he selected, like he went to the archives, he selected a specific thing, but at the same time I think he was probably still under contract, so he's not a brand ambassador for IWC, but he worked with them but he's also worn the Citizens and things like that to get into the part. So that's just part of people's process. Everyone comes into watches in a different way, I guess. And yeah, those are two. Yeah, they all. I could do a whole other volume of those. We had to cut it off, and so I hope they both do well. Everybody buy the books so I can do another.
Where's the best place for people to buy them? It's
Um,
Amazon or
I think for people, Amazon. And yeah, you can both of the public like ACC, the publisher for the Watch Spotting book, and Tenoy's. They also have. If you go to their websites, they will link you to a shopping platform. But yeah, Amazon's the easiest, or Indigo.
I really enjoyed Watch Spotting, and I enjoyed it more than I even thought that I would, because I thought it was going to be a story just about, celebrities and what it is they wear, but it isn't really. Of course, many of them are ambassadors, like you say, and they're paid handsomely to wear those watches. And you talk about many of them, like Beckman, Federer, or Hamilton, or Pitt, like you just said. But all of them sort of transcend that role as well as true enthusiasts. And some, like Steve McQueen or Andy Warhol or Paul Newman, they were never really ambassadors at all. So falling back on my earlier question about identity, do you think that at that level of stardom that celebrities are defined by the watches that they wear, or that in some way they actually that the watches are defined by the celebrity? I think here, for example, of Paul Newman, and I think that the Handheart that he wore, or sorry, Steve McQueen, the Handheart that he wore, Handheart didn't necessarily have at that point in time the kind of reputation that would define him, but yet he has somehow left an imprint on that watch.
Oh, for sure. There's like he's just a style icon all around. Like whatever. In the book we talk about Bullet, the movie Bullet, a lot. So not a movie that a lot of people I think could recount the plot points, but had lots of great chase scenes and driving around, and that look that he had. But those everything he wore became sort of iconic straight off the bat because he was Steve McQueen. And Paul Newman the same. Like he had watches that were not Rolexes, but when people find out it was a Paul Newman watch, I was trying to think of what was it. Steve McQueen had a Ben Ruth, which a brand that keeps kind of like Bulova, American-based Swiss produced watches, went under, tried to revive it a few times. It's undergoing another revival now. And they will always bring up the Steve McQueen wearing it in one movie. And because it's Steve McQueen, sorry, but it can go the other direction too, that I think is sort of the Daniel Craig effect, with he's so associated with Omega now. But people, I don't, I would, no one's going to call it the Daniel Craig Seamaster as like a Paul Newman Daytona. But at the same time, there's people who just, they're either style gurus. I don't think Daniel Craig was, he's a well-dressed person, but I don't think he was like on the Steve McQueen level of, trying to capture that look, that lightning in a bottle. But at the same time,
It's different though. Steve McQueen was Steve McQueen wearing a watch. Daniel Craig was not Daniel Craig wearing a watch. It was James Bond wearing a watch.
Yes, exactly.
True.
So there's just, they had so many articles about, same with moon watches, what watches actually went into space. And it's not all just Omega. There's various things. It's the same, but there's more. There's all kinds of James Bond watches. So some people are just drawn to that kind of connection. They like their James Bond. Sorry, I'm keep thinking about other things. There's there's so many, like, it's the cultural cachet or whatever of watches, and what makes them so interesting is that it can be, people love the watch and spend $100,000 because it's got, a minute repeater, a Grand Sonnier, a Pete Sonnier, alarm, a tourbillon, like, super action packed, and the more complications, the better. And some people like it, the Andy Warhol, the Piaget time only, really simple design. Um, and it's like Andy Warhol was not necessarily, there was the story about his Cartier tank was, it didn't even work. He couldn't be bothered to have it fixed. It was just cool looking. So there's so many, when I was writing of the watch spotting, all of these celebrities, all of these people, just brought different. It was amazing how many different stories there were to tell, when you would think that it could just be their brand ambassador, so they have to wear that watch.
Mhm.
Some people, and that's a story in itself. Yes, there are, like, I think with the Ronaldo thing is like, this guy's had brand ambassadorships with everyone, and he'll take whatever whatever money that people will offer him. But that's also, part of his influence, because even if he is even if he is a Tom Brady who jumps from, sponsorship to sponsorship, people will still buy them because Tom Brady wore a Tag Heuer and then went to IWC, and, like, yeah, it's still gonna affect people, and people are still gonna buy a watch based on their heroes because they want to kind of be them a bit, I guess.
I think the fact that we all work in the watch industry, we can all sort of agree that the death of the wristwatch has been greatly exaggerated, but your book sort of proves it, because you talk a lot about, like, well, there's a part in there about Rihanna, and you say how she's influencing the next generation of enthusiasts.
Yes.
You talk about how people are still lining up for a Moon's watch. You talk about how people are still willing to put their name down for years-long wait lists for a Daytona. So clearly there's still a thirst for watches out there. But I have a really tough question for you. Do you think that watches are still alive and kicking because we report on them, or do we report on them because they're still alive and kicking?
I would say we report on them because they're still alive and kicking. They're very, very niche. That a lot they're If you get on the subway, and as watch people will do, is check everybody's wrist out, see what they're wearing. I would say there's maybe 1 in 6 people are wearing a watch at all. But I think that at the same time, I get, I started writing these kind of watch spotting things a long time ago because for Destinations, a magazine in the States. And it was because the readers wanted to know what celebrities were wearing on their wrist. And nowadays, in the last 5 years, every time someone goes on a talk show, like it used to be red carpet, who dressed who for a red carpet, but now it's like, I did an article on what watches celebrities were wearing on Hot Ones, because they're all, in the celebrity world, that's in sports and things, it signifies that you've made it in a way. It's just wearing a watch shows that you made it. And then people who want to make it look up to athletes and say, yeah, like, oh, this, LeBron James bought everybody on his team a watch, or sorry, Dwayne Wade. I mean, he bought everyone. He was playing for Miami. He bought everyone an Hublot on the team. And so many people I know who follow basketball were just like, I wish I could play basketball so I could get a free watch. and yeah, it's like, because I can't remember the guy's name once, but I was talking to an NFL football player, and because I was like, what's the, in football, the go-to watch was always, you had to get a Rolex, whereas basketball players would get Royal Oaks. And I thought that's what does that mean? And it's like, well, because, who was your hero growing up? What watch did they wear? So if LeBron James was wearing an AP, then you wanted that too coming up. And when you finally got, like, people would just get signed, and maybe they wouldn't have a career lasting longer than one season. But, that was, you had to, once you made it to the big leagues, you had to go get that watch. Because it proved that you were there, and that becomes a perpetuating thing. So if you look at Rihanna, and she's doing fun things with watches, or Taylor Swift is sending out secret messages through her watch choices, that people who look up to those celebrities want to, even if you can't afford what was it that Taylor Swift was wearing? A vintage Rolex, totally gem encrusted. Like, you can't afford that. You wouldn't know where to get one, but you can still wear a watch and maybe feel a little closer. Like, someone told me, you won't be able to be James Bond, but you can at least wear a watch like James Bond. So yeah, that's the celebrity angle. But other people just, I think, their father wore a watch or their mother wore a watch, and they have a good memory of that. It doesn't even have to be, some kind of star worship thing. It's part of this, again, going back to, it's part of the story you tell about yourself. So it is a little nichey. It's not like a mandated thing where everybody wore a watch. If in the 70s or even the 80s, but there's still a lot that do. Mm-hmm. And you do get, like, the lineups around the block for swatches. We didn't have lineups around the blocks for swatches when I was a kid. Back in my day, we just went to a store and bought one.
Yeah, back in our day, you can go to a Rolex dealership and they'd have some in the counters to buy.
Yeah. So,
but you mentioned something really quick. Sorry about to cut you off there. You see someone in the subway wearing a watch, and, just like you guys, probably spot watches before we actually see the person's face. But do you guys have this internal dialogue when you see a cool watch on someone, whether or not you should go and talk to them? Do you think, will I spook him, or do they even know they're wearing a cool watch? Do you build up the nerve and actually go talk to them before they get off the bus?
I wouldn't do it to an absolute stranger.
Yeah, absolute stranger we're talking.
Yeah. But I do it to waiters. And, like if somebody comes and serves me and they're wearing a Quartz Tag Heuer from the 90s or something like that, I'll say, hey, that's a really cool watch. Where'd you get that? So if there's an overture already and that we're having an interaction, absolutely.
But not a stranger.
Not a stranger.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can never work up the guts to do it to a stranger. I guess if they were wearing something like a micro brand, maybe I would, because that's already niche enough. They probably already in our space, and there might be a chance they didn't know who we are. A micro brand, but if they're wearing like like you said, a tag or something like that, chances are they probably either gifted it or they don't even know. And then you're just some weirdo walking up to them. Hey, nice watch.
We were on a resort vacation a few years ago, and it was just a beachy pool resort type of thing. And I kept seeing this guy, and he had an SKX on. And then I saw him another day, and he had an orange Monster on. This is a few years ago. And I was like, oh, he has to be into watches. So I went up, didn't talk to him. He didn't know a thing about him. He just liked the look of them, bought them on Amazon. And yeah, so now I don't bother anymore.
Yeah, what if it's some cool Instagram guy that is really into watches but never shows his face on Instagram? It's just watch wrist shots and watches, and it just happens to be some really cool connection you could have.
Yeah, that's
Bob, you're missing out, man.
Yeah, that's true. So We were talking about going down the rabbit hole earlier, and I went down the rabbit hole researching you actually the last couple of days. And one thing I found that you have a skill in that is I had never known this, but is in creating short films. And one that I watched was called Perspective 5, The Time Traveler, which is about a watch you found thrifting, a Glashuta original. It's actually, I think it was on their YouTube channels where it was posted.
Yeah.
But you ended up traveling back to their HQ with the watch. It's a really cool story and very well produced. Is that something you dabble in at all these days? Like any film work at all, or?
I haven't in a while, because I also used to do some radio bits, more radio than film. I would like to. I don't know how I found the time to do it then. It's a lot of work. It should be easier now because you have.
It looked like a lot of work.
Yeah, because like I did it. Glashuta did they were basically not a contest, but they were looking for people who had ideas to do a short film. So my idea was to take my watch back to its homeland. And that was super fun, although sort of humbling because I thought when you do a short film, you kind of have, oh, here's the storyline. Glashuta at the time that my watch was made was under East Germany, so communist Germany. And so I had this thing is how did my watch make it from behind the Iron Curtain to Canada to a flea market in downtown Toronto? And so I had this like romantic idea that some woman like, crossed the checkpoint Charlie in Berlin, risking her life and her watch to come to Canada. That wasn't true at all. They made watches behind the Iron Curtain and sold them to all kinds of markets. So, it was great because I learned a new thing, but it's sort of humbling when it teaches you to not think you know everything about watches, even if you write about them. Yes, I would like, so yeah, it was a great opportunity. I would so love to, go back to these, places in America where they had watchmaking for, like, I think American watchmaking, like even IWC was started by an American who brought kind of the American industrialization and mass production techniques to, higher up Switzerland, higher up to Swiss watchmaking. I would love to like go back to these like ghost towns and these old factories and find the people who's like it's just there's little amazing stories everywhere. Short films are easier probably. I would I've seen like the people who've tried to make feature length or series, and I'm in awe of them. I just like a little tiny story. But yes, hit me up. More books, more movies. Everyone listens.
Was that
and more
short
money
movie? Yeah, was that short film done when Glashuta Original was a part of the Swatch Group or before?
I think it's when they were part of the Swatch Group.
Oh wow, that's cool. I wish they did more stuff like that.
Yeah,
it was 2011 actually, because I just watched it this morning. So I think it was put out in 2011.
That's a long time ago. I think the Swatch Group was very different back then too. So
yeah, that's true. And
they
probably
were doing,
smaller.
Not that they're not. Yes, smaller. I think the brands had a little more autonomy. Not that I'm disparaging the Swatch Group, but if I was running them, I'd make more movies. But we've already talked about my lack of financial skill, money making skills. So
Rhonda, what's your creative process like when you're developing a story or a feature? Do you start with the research? Is it an emotional thing or is it intuition?
I think for me personally, the stories I like to pitch the most are I'll fall down a rabbit hole and I think I've discovered something that no one else has talked about. But there is an emotional part of that too. Like I just get energized by discovering something or rediscovering something or feeling like a subject is not been talked about enough. Or I'll just get mad when I see somebody has written a lazy article that's, makes a broad assumption that isn't true, that hasn't done their research. But yeah, I'm in my happy place going to the Toronto Metro Reference Library. They have so many great books about watchmaking and some crappy ones too. But there's just I want to. I'm putting it out there. I'm manifesting. Moser has like the craziest history. The people, it's like a total soap opera, and I would love to just talk about like it has not really any reflection on Moser of today, which is also super fun and but just like like it's such a had these the Crown miniseries or any of these American horror stories. It's like I want to see the Moser story, and I'll just get really excited. And so far, no one has Hollywood has not come knocking to take me up on this plan. But yeah, I think But there's also some stuff that's just news reporting. Like we have to know what's going on. I don't consider myself I do consider myself more as a lifestyle kind of writer, not a business writer. I don't know all of the inner machinations, but I do try to read and keep up on them. Yeah, I think a lot of it's emotional, I guess. What interests, like I want to do what I think readers are interested in, but I'm also going to get more excited by things that I'm also interested in and want to share.
Yeah. Did you approach Moser about that? Because I think they're cool people. I think they'd go for that.
I will. I'll send them an email now.
It's a good idea.
They are
They'd
like
go all over that.
they gave me once a whole series of books. They're in German, which I don't speak that well, but of that family history. So yeah, they're totally into because they still have like original family members on the board too. So
Yeah, for sure. Or maybe they don't want their dirty laundry aired out. Who knows? Well, I'm sure
they're the
they'd
ones
love
who
that.
told me about it.
Well, there you go. So
um, it's not totally dirty. It's just like just just interesting. They still are, and this is a great example of a brand using their heritage and stuff to infuse the watches they're making today. So there is that kind of irreverence, kind of rule breaking built into the history. And I think they do a good job of carrying that on now.
yeah, agreed. Agreed. How has the landscape of luxury journalism changed since you began? What challenges and opportunities do you see the shift to digital media?
Um, yeah, it's weird because luxury in a way is doing really well compared to other levels of there's the whole fossil group news this week. The sort of
Yeah,
so there's definitely like if you're at the upper echelons, um, you'll probably pull through because you only need to sell 10 watches a year if you're selling $400,000 watches. If you're Roger Smith, you'll weather the storm. But they also don't do really marketing things either. So, um, yeah, I think there's a part where I think writing about luxury is support. The luxury brands need to support the writing. They need to probably maybe do a little more advertising. They value print, but they're probably also trying to see what they can get away with influencers digitally. Like they're probably experimenting a bit. What's the best return for their investments? So that's not a new thing. That's been going on for 10 years. So I think what we're learning in the luxury part is that there are different platforms and they all have different value and they have different audiences. There might be some overlap, but I think if you take something like, the calibrated wrist, for example, because it's right here in front of me, that's a value, that's a different value proposition. Like it's going to be here in my house forever. Because I don't like a good magazine. I keep for reference, and a lot of TikToks and things, a lot of Instagram that is more ephemeral. It will disappear if people's main thing is Instagram stories. It disappears after 24 hours. It's less than a snapshot, but it's still useful. They're just different things, and I kind of like stuff with a little more permanence.
I agree. One thing that I wanted to ask you, with the way we're talking about the way things are sort of changing over the last few years, but with somebody that's been in watch and fashion journalism for so long, what are your thoughts when it comes to AI and journalism of any form, whether it's watches or not? Is that something that scares you, or?
I'm very anti-AI for many reasons. And I know there are people in my youth, a dream world, because I would love the idea of the concept of AI would have been great, because I just want ideas to come out of my head and onto the page and not have to, I'm a bad typist. I never took typing. Wouldn't it be great? And then it came, and it's like, and I could kind of see this too when I worked in magazines and you had more like Google searches. And so, part of being an editor is often mentoring younger writers, and they would give me copy that was so bad because they just Googled a quote. There's always, somebody famous, like Kurt Vonnegut said this, and no, he didn't. You just Googled it, and someone on the internet put a picture, like a dumb quote, and said Kurt Vonnegut said it. He didn't. You need to think a little more rational. You have to, like I had to when I came up, we had to go to the library and look up things and cross-reference them to make sure they were right. And AI makes it doubly bad because, like, even now you have to, if I do a search in Google, you have to type -AI so you don't get AI. And if you forget to do it, you get all kinds of slop. And it's I'm sure, very tempting for people to cut and paste the slop and not question whether it's true or not. And if you're also younger, like I know because I'm old, I was around the first time, a certain timepiece came out or this movie came out. And if I did an AI search that said, oh, Rolex, I can't come up with a specific example, but I was researching something, I forgot to type -AI, and so that AI result came up, and it was just like, oh yeah, Rolex was invented in 1737, and it's like, no, it wasn't. Like, it's just scraping things, and the more bad stuff, it's scraping the bad and the good. And if you don't have the kind of grounding in actual history or the curiosity to question things, it's bad. I don't like it. And I think it makes, but the worst part of it is I think, a lot of people use it to write press releases. And so you get bad press releases to start with. So it's hard to,
you can tell, I've seen a lot of them that you can just tell that it's
Yeah.
that it's AI. But yeah.
My big fear around AI is that ultimately, like it's not for the immediate future, but it's for down the road. If
Yes.
people are just continually publishing something that came from AI and it's perpetuating an error or something that's just not well written, it's going to eventually become an echo chamber because the things that you're going to
Yeah.
Google and look for are going to be things that were published by AI. So you're just going to get it basically consuming itself. And eventually you won't even have any original thought that's out there. So, but
Yes.
again, that's not for its immediate future, but it is down the road.
When the calculator was invented, people stopped doing math in their head and stopped calculating. And now kids can't even do math at all in their head. They rely on their smartphones, or, this is going to be the same thing with this AI writing. Eventually people won't write their own stuff, and they won't be able to write emails properly, or they won't be able to email or make letters or write anything. It's going to just depend on AI to do everything. And we all sound like old fogies here.
Back in my day.
I mean, we are, but
there is one interesting thing I read about AI, was that because people use AI to read job applications, so it can speak to, if you had an AI resume and cover letter, that the AI bot that's reading it will recognize it more positively. So when it's the robots talking to the other robots. But
that's crazy.
I'm against it generally. I know people who are artists who use it to create things that are kind of interesting, but I don't know overall if it's good, especially if we're not teaching people to think critically.
Have you guys seen that video of, how a lot of companies have AIs answering phones, right?
Yeah.
So there was this video of a guy using an AI to book a hotel. So he was using an AI of himself looking for places to stay. So he dialed into a hotel chain that had an AI. They both recognized that they were AI and switched to a binary language to speak to each other because it was easier.
Oh.
It's just boops and beeps. Bleep, 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 bleep. Oh my God. That's scary. That's the future. They're going to start talking to each other when no one's going to understand anything. We're all doomed. It's Terminator all over again.
Well, let's step back from the abyss here for a second. So, Rhonda,
we just lost our younger audience. They're all gone there.
I think, one of the cool things about what it is that we do here in Canada in particular is that it's a small world. We bump into each other all the time at these things like the Toronto Timepiece Show, et cetera. Rhonda, you and I bumped into each other at a Tudor event in the Distillery District with David Beckham. And, being Canadian does actually mean something in the watch sphere because there's not a lot of us that are out there. So I'm curious, we're a long way from the Swiss Valleys. But it is still a quietly vibrant community. Do you think that, your position as a Canadian journalist, observing the global watch scene shapes your perspective in some way that is different or valuable?
Yeah, I think for all things, I think Canadians take on a bit of an outsider perspective. They're not maybe, caught up in sort of American exceptionalism, flag waving, or the kind of more Swiss reserve. We're outside of things a little bit and get a bigger picture. I think the best example I can think of is when we were at Watches and Wonders right before they announced the tariffs against Swiss watches, and we'd already, as Canadians, gone through the whole 51st state business and kind of trolling about invading Canada. So when I was in Switzerland and we would talk about what did the Swiss think, tariffs aren't going to hit us, it's not going to happen, and then it happened. It was like Thursday in the morning, and you're doing because of time difference, everyone's like, this is great, business as usual, and then by the evening it was like, oh no. and they're still showing up, I guess, bent to to Trump. So yeah, I think I sort of I'm sure there were plenty of people who saw it coming, but the general overall feeling was it's not going to affect us, but it already had affected Canada. So, and historically we've had tariff issues in, you know, that we remember. So, and I think too, like, because we're not maybe a market that's they're trying to, like, you know, Japan, like they put all their efforts into the American market or the Chinese market, or and Canada, I don't think anyone's ever really done that. So it's kind of gives us a perspective, not that we're, you know, an ugly stepchild kind of thing, but um we're not the football star who gets all the attention until they're not able to play anymore. I think it makes us more grounded. But it is, we are getting more attention again with these shows coming up. I think we had to make it happen as Canadians. It wasn't like, and that's good too, because you don't really want like an American group coming into Canada to organize watch shows. It's nice that it's local and
Homegrown.
Yes, homegrown. That's the word.
Yeah. See, Brent, you mentioned before, you said no more doom and gloom, and then we bring up tariffs.
Yeah.
Rhonda, what's a misconception people have about the watch industry that you'd like to set straight?
I you know, I just had talked about like the Swiss Reserve or anything. I think that for the most part, though, it's an industry that people are really excited, like they have a personal passion for it. There was an article, a business story I read about, you know, somebody coming in to take over some corporation that had gone into receivership that came from a totally outside, did not work in that industry before. That seems to be more common in other worlds, that, you know, you can bring someone in as the head of a movie studio who's never even seen a movie, but they're good with spreadsheets. And I think, you know, people will say the Swiss are stodgy and slow to turn around, but they're also very passionate about it. They get excited. It's more of a personal calling. So which makes things fun. It is, and not everyone is super, you know, I don't think at the end of the day that there's any CEO who doesn't have a spring in their step when they start talking about watches or showing you around. So yeah, not as stodgy as you would think. That's my, yeah, I can't think of any other.
That's very good.
Yeah.
Yeah, people do think the Swiss are very cold and stodgy. It's good way of saying it. And it's true. We've dealt with a lot of people from Switzerland, and they're, like you said, very passionate and driven, and you know, they get excited when they start sharing their products with you, and they see that you're excited about it too. They just light up. So, yeah, that's true. Do you have any advice for emerging writers or creatives navigating their own path? What would it be?
It's tough. I had this conversation with a friend of mine the other day. We were talking about, like, you know, being a mentor, and they said, like, I said, well, you know, what advice would I give to the same question? And this, what advice should I give? And they're like, don't do it. But I think that, you know, there's so many ways to be involved. So if you love watches, you don't have to necessarily, you can be involved without being a published writer. Like, you can do stuff like Jason and you know, start the timepiece shows. You can just join a meetup group and enjoy watches and meet lots of people, because they're generally not so you know, going back to gatekeeping, there are people who will go to shows who are like running their own company. So yeah, it's I think investigate if making money and becoming famous is your only goal in the watch world, is I probably wouldn't advise it, uh, because it's a lot of work. But do it. Like, I've met so many cool people who have started their own micro brands or brands, or like who built their own watch. And I love that. And I think they love it too, because they did it. They followed the passion. But if your passion is just making money, then maybe don't. And writing is very difficult to get into specifically, because how do I've met a lot of influencers over my time, because influencers have been around for, over a decade now, and they're not going anywhere. So, but most people seem to fall to the wayside because they didn't, you don't get paid well, and you can't pay your rent with free trips to places, or, but they're fun. It's I don't know. I'm torn between saying don't do it and do it, because I've obviously done it and I'm happy and it's been great. Better than when I worked in fashion, because people are so friendly, and I made, great friends, and never gotten bored, never gotten frustrated. So yeah, follow your heart, but also realize that there are other ways to operate, to experience and enjoy the watch community and watchmaking and the history without trying to make a living off of it.
Yeah, agreed. If you're in it to make money, find something else. If you're in it because you're passionate about watches, you're passionate about the industry, and the events and people you're going to meet and the friends you're going to make, then that's the right reasons. And if money happens to come along with it at some point, then that's great.
Yes.
So finally, what's next for you, Rhonda? Any upcoming projects, passions you're excited about? What's next?
I'm promoting the books has been a weird trip, because I'm normally on the other side of the equation. I'm the one asking the questions and writing up the stories. So it's been interesting. But I want to do part 2 of the women's book, or, and like again, just so many stories to tell. What else? I've sort of been traveling's been a little curtailed for various reasons. But I would like to do some more projects now that I have a bit more free time that's not traveling. You guys made me think about doing movies again. We'll make some short films. We'll get my dad's.
Brent's all into it. Brent will help you produce. You'll do it.
I'll be a cameraman.
There you go.
Yeah.
So on behalf of the three of us, thank you so much for joining us today. If our audience wants to find you or find out more about you, perhaps follow you on socials, where can they do that?
I guess I'm not huge. Like, I do Instagram, so that's at the real Rhonda Riche, Riche. Then you can see pictures of my watch of the day pictures of my cat, whatever else I fancy. There's watchanista.com, got something up there at least once a week, if not almost every day. Doing some coverage for Dubai Watch Week. There's lots of stuff coming up. That's my other thing. Is like, there are almost too many watches right now, but it's great. But it keeps you busy. And yeah, that's about it. I'm on LinkedIn, but I don't ever check.
Very good. Thank you again for being with us today, Rhonda.
Good to see you guys, as always.
Yeah.
Yeah,
nice
you
to
too.
You too. The Time to Calibrate podcast is out every 2 weeks and can be found wherever you find your podcasts. We sure would love some love. So hit the like button, some reviews, some subscribes. That'd be great. Your feedback is much appreciated. If you have any questions, concerns, or suggestions, we're all ears. Well, maybe eyes. You can email us at timetocalibrate@gmail.com. Until next time, T2C out.